So, welcome to another edition of the BYU Management Society's Learn from Professional Initiative. Our goal is to provide guidance to young adults in their career journey. So, today we have the great opportunity to learn from Breanna Reed, an experienced audiologist. So, Breanna graduated with a bachelor's in science bachelor's in science in audiology and speech-language pathology from BYU. She also received a doctorate in audiology from University of Arizona in Tucson, having spent her clinical year in the Audiology Clinic of Duke University. So, Brianna, I know you're working as a pediatric audiologist in UCSF Benoit Children's Hospital in Oakland. So, tell us a little bit about that. Why did you choose to be an audiologist?
So audiology actually was a field that I didn't even know existed until I was halfway through my undergrad, but stumbled upon it and have really enjoyed my time there. I actually got into it by thinking that I wanted to be a speech therapist. And the undergrad for speech therapy and audiology is the same. So as I was taking the audiology classes, that just kind of really drew me in. And I have loved it ever since.
So tell us a little bit about your career path then. You said you got drawn into it, but what has been your career path?
So I did my undergraduate at BYU, like you said, and then moved to graduate school at the University of Arizona. Audiologists, you can do a lot of different things. You can work in lots of different like clinical settings. You can have your own private practice. You can work for hospitals. You can work in ORs for other like tech companies, stuff like that, doing research. So when I was at the University of Arizona, they had us doing different clinical placements. And I went into it actually thinking that I wanted to work with adults because it seemed like they were easy and simple and it'd be a, easy job to just like go in and go out, no big deal. But then I did a rotation in one of the pediatric hospitals there in Tucson and just was so drawn in by the fact that every kid is a little bit of a puzzle and you got to figure them out. And just like the satisfaction in getting a really hard kid to tell you what they can hear and show like ways that treatment can help like lift up their life and help them make major progress was so satisfying. And so I just couldn't leave it alone.
Yeah. So it sounds like you went from the easy path, right, with adults to the more challenging that helped you grow and develop, become a better audiologist with the kids. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell us what's the best career advice that you've ever received?
Best career advice I've ever received is just to never stop learning. I feel like there's, especially in pediatric audiology, where it is a little bit more complicated, there's always more to learn. You are never infallible and you will never know everything in that room. So just being so open to learning from your patients, learning from coworkers, learning from other colleagues and professionals that you're interacting with, and just never being afraid to ask for a second opinion, ask for advice, never thinking that that makes you less of an audiologist to do so. Like, interacting and engaging with other people and getting their opinions and advice and learning new techniques is the only way to survive, especially in pediatric audiology. So that is definitely how I have approached my career.
So it sounds like you've learned a lot from the people you interact on a daily basis. Is there other ways that you've learned?
There's definitely like continuing education stuff that you do. I like to attend conferences each year, some specific to like parts of my field, like cochlear implants versus just like the regular pediatric audiology as a whole. But going to the conferences, especially being there in person where you can network with other people and see what other hospitals are doing, has been really impactful in helping to make my practice continue to grow.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, you talk about cochlear implants, right? You've been with the company where you're at the hospital for 10 years, but the last 5 years you switched into that cochlear implant. How did you decide to make that switch?
Going into the field, that's always been an area of interest for me. Cochlear implants is definitely like a specialty area in audiology. There's not as many cochlear implant patients, so there's less cochlear implant audiologists. And so it kind of was taking advantage of an opportunity. One of the cochlear implant audiologists at our hospital was leaving to go to a different job. And so I just kind of, as she was leaving, would just start to be like, hey, can I observe some of your appointments? Hey, can I come in? And hey, what can I pick your brain about this? And so as she was leaving, I just kind of positioned myself to be in the place where if they needed somebody to step in and take over her patients, that I was available.
So did you like slightly raise your hand and say, hey, or was this more informal kind of? pushing with?
The way I did it was the person who was leaving. I kind of let her know that if we were going to replace her as a position, that I wanted to be that person. And so she kind of was the one who put my name for towards her management to say, hey, she could be a good fit.
Yeah. So do you wish you would have made the direct connection as well, or did this kind of backdoor approach work well for you?
Specifically for our hospital, I think the backdoor approach was the most effective. Mm-hmm. It was kind of more reading the team.
And you mentioned that you have a lot of continuing education that you have to do, right? Is that like a 10-hour a year thing or a 50-hour? How much continuation?
So for California licensure, we have to do 12 hours a year of continuing ed per year.
Mm-hmm. And is that with COVID and stuff, has that gone more online or is it in person? You go back to Duke or wherever?
Right. They very slowly are changing the rules about it. Originally, they allowed you to do online classes as long as you took them live, but you couldn't do anything that was like delayed or recorded. And so now it's getting more and more of that. There's several different websites that allow for online continuing education. They've got tons of like amazing stuff there. And so it's just a matter of making it fit the licensure requirements. But yeah, I like a balance of the in-person and the online. Online is just always available. So whenever you have a spare hour or two, you can go on and find a class that piques your interest, which is good. But the in-person stuff is really good too.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's that whole time versus, being in person where you can ask questions and get responses, et cetera, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, good. So what are some of the trends in your being an audiologist now? What's some of the trends you're seeing?
So some of the biggest things that I feel like audiology is a field that is constantly changing with technology. That's one of the pieces that I didn't realize getting into it, how much about Bluetooth I was going to have to know, or how about, different systems with the schools and other things that we have to interact with. One of the biggest trends I would say right now is moving to telemedicine and what audiologists can do via Zoom versus having to bring the patients in person. So that's something that we are learning how to do, especially it really helps manage when your patients are coming from really far away. We are a hospital that sees patients that come from as far as like 4 hours away, which is a lot if you are just coming down for like a quick little tune-up or whatever. And so to be able to offer telemedicine appointments is a big deal. Another trend that's happening right now is there's a lot of like over-the-counter hearing aids and hearing aids that don't require like a prescription. And so there's a lot of it's kind of a balance between fear and trying to take advantage of opportunities as audiologists to see how this can actually help us make our field more successful and get our services out to more people, but without getting us out of a job.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting when you're talking about that telemedicine stuff, right? So if I'm sitting here and I say, hey, Breanna, I want to have my hearing checked, right? How do you do that via, like, if we're doing that on the Zoom call, how would that work?
So during COVID, there was a lot of interest in this. And so we heard from a lot of places that worked with a lot of remote telemed stuff. So like somebody in Alaska, they're obviously dealing with people that are far more remote than anybody in California is. And so the way that they do it is they literally like send equipment via FedEx or whatever to the patient's house, or there's like a clinic, like a small clinic that like a nurse can be there to help set up stuff to make sure you got all the things that you need to be able to do a hearing test or to be able to program hearing aids. Because so much has gone to Bluetooth, you can actually just send like an iPad with some software on there that connects to their devices, and you can make adjustments and programming things from that without them having to be in your clinic. So yeah, they've come a long ways. There's not everything that you can do via telemed, but there's a lot of things you can do now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like even if you have to come in once or twice, but all the tweaks or whatever on the back end, that really has come a long ways. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if you can get more and more of that. Like we could just download to your own iPad, right, or your own iPhone or whatever,
exactly,
and connect to your own Bluetooth or whatever, right? So I've got my Bose head things. I can put them on, and we can test right away. That'd be really cool.
Exactly. Sign you up.
I know. Exactly. I'm getting to that age where I may have to have a hearing test. So can you recommend any websites or books or periodicals that would, be helpful for a young adult that's looking into learning more about your occupation?
So I'd say working with pediatrics, especially, we work with a lot of families that have children that have multiple developmental disabilities. One of my favorite books that I've ever read was The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. It talks about a family that comes from a non-Native American background, and they have a child with multiple disabilities. And it's just kind of how they interact with the medical system and how their like culture interacts with like medical literacy, that piece of things. I thought that was a phenomenal textbook or phenomenal book to read. So I really like that one. As far as just like learning about audiology, there's Success for Kids with Hearing Loss that talks a lot about just what hearing loss is and how audiology services can help support kids with hearing loss, how it deals with building language and kind of what their life trajectory is going to look like. So I'd say those are kind of my top two favorites.
Okay. No, that's great. And you talk about some of those things, right? Have you seen tell us about your most, kind of memorable experience of somebody that came in, a little kid that didn't really, couldn't hear at all, and now all of a sudden walks out being able to hear.
Yeah. It's probably it's just the coolest. It never gets old, being able to do that kind of stuff. So I think about a patient that he's about to turn 4. I've known him for about 2.5 years. So he was born, no complications during pregnancy. Everything was fine, passed his newborn hearing screening, but came to see us when he was about 1.5 years because he was speech delayed. And so when we were doing his hearing test, we found that he had hearing loss. That was pretty significant. So we fit him with hearing aids. And he was doing pretty good, but still not great. And he was having issues with ear infections and other things. We weren't really sure what was going on. Eventually, he was diagnosed with something called congenital cytomegalovirus, which can have effects on other like neurodevelopmental skills. And also can cause progressive hearing loss. So he ended up switching to a specialized preschool program that could help support him with his developmental concerns, could help support him with speech and language development. And then he ended up getting a cochlear implant as well. And so all those things working together, getting the diagnosis right, getting the support systems right, getting the devices and amplification right. Just in the last year, he has exploded. And now he'll come in and he will talk your ear off about trains and airplanes and all the things that he's like super into. And he just has not been held back at all by, that time where we were still figuring things out, but he just has got quite the little feisty personality now and is just thriving.
And it sounds like he's doing great. Is it stressful for the parents as well to go through that process?
Absolutely. Every single time they come in, they're just ready for bad news again because they got bad news so many times in a row, And so that's another part of pediatric audiology that I didn't think I would enjoy as much is I thought, sticking with the kids, that's the fun part, but working with the parents and helping like empower them to know how to advocate for their kids, where to find the appropriate resources, how to get educated about what they can do to help their children has been really fun just to see them kind of grow into that.
Is there some things that you've done to kind of learn that process, or has it just been trial and error to learn how to work with the parents?
A lot of it has been trial and error, to be fair, and a lot of error that has taught me a lot of things. But honestly, it's also like learning from parents that have gone through it a lot. I have a lot of patients that have been established and they can talk to me and I'll help connect them with other families. And so listening to them talk to each other as they talk about what it was like to get that initial diagnosis, what it was like to kind of come to the level of acceptance of, okay, this is what the capacity is that my kid has. This is what we need to do. There's tons of like continuing ed courses about counseling and helping to like empower parents and family strategies, that kind of stuff. Working with other professionals, we have both a psychologist and a social worker that work on our cochlear implant team, and listening to the way that they just manage all of the emotional part of this whole process is just magical. And so you listen to it and just try to like soak up as much as you can because you need it.
Yeah, no. And it sounds like they're almost creating a support group. Is it an official support group or is this just a
we have both official ones and kind of unofficial ones. I think one of the first things that we always do is try to connect like one-on-one families, just because it's a little bit easier for first-time parents who have never dealt with hearing loss before. Going to a big group is a little bit scary. But we also try to like get together like several families that are all like, okay, you've all gotten hearing aids within the last 3 months. let's all get together and talk about how that's going. And then they could form like this little play group with the kids, and then the parents get to sit around and talk about it. We do like family picnics for our entire department 3 or 4 times a year. So all the department families, if they want to come, can show up and just hang out at a park, and everybody's running around with hearing aids and implants all over the place, and the parents are talking to each other. So kind of different ways to get them all to interact.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like if you do that, then all of a sudden the stigma's gone, right? It's like, hey, I'm not the only one that has hearing aids, right? There's like 50 other kids running around that have them as well, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. It helps a ton because, yeah, a lot of kids have never seen another kid with hearing aids. Parents certainly have never seen other kids with hearing aids. And so to see that not only other people have them, but they can be successful with them is a really big deal. Helping to look into the future for their kids helps a lot.
Okay. So I know that some young adults, right, like to have a meaningful impact. And some of these stories are a meaningful impact, but is there any other ways that your job or your career has provided a meaningful impact?
I think one of the pieces that's also really fun with audiology is, I had to do clinical rotations as a student. And so now as a professional audiologist, I get to host students that come from different programs and kind of teach them about what pediatric audiology can be and train them into the types of clinicians that I want to have in our field. And that's been really fun because, I will say anybody who's looking into this field, there's tons of openings. We need you. Come on in. But, we need good clinicians that are going to, treat their patients the right way and like see the most important aspects and not just be the technician and just be doling out hearing aids and moving on. And so to be able to like impart that piece of things has been really cool to see. Students come in that don't really know. They're like a little bit nervous to be around the kids, a little bit nervous to, touch their ears and do parts of the testing. To help them kind of catch the passion for the impact that you can have is really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems like, especially in your career or in your, being an audiologist, there's going to be so many of those ones who are just like, hey, go get one off the shelf, right? Go down and get one. Oh, it's like, I need this much and tone it, yourself or whatever. But having those skill sets, it really is going to set you apart in the future. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So in closing, what other career advice would you give to young adults?
I would say the biggest thing is I was kind of figuring out what part of audiology or audiology in general and what part of audiology I like is go try it out. Go find an audiologist, go talk to them, go observe a couple of days in their clinic, go see what it really is. Because, like I said in the beginning, I went into audiology thinking that I wanted to work in a completely different set of settings than I currently do. But until you like really go and see what it is and see what the day-to-day looks like, you'll never really know. And so audiologists, in my experience, have always been very open to, yes, please come observe, come try things out. And so go do it before you commit yourself to anything because you want to know what you're getting yourself into.
Mm-hmm. No, and that sounds like a great, career advice, right? If you're sitting here going, well, maybe I want to be an eye doctor, maybe I want to be a regular doctor. Maybe I want to be an audiologist. You can go test these things out and have interviews with people, watch what they do. Maybe you end up wanting to be a dentist because of that, those discussions. But if you don't have those discussions, you can spend a lot of time in your career going to a lot of school that ends up, you don't use that, right? So did you have that in your career? Did you take any classes you was like, hey, well, I kind of had to backtrack a little bit?
Well, I didn't even hear about audiology till I was a second-year sophomore. So yes, I started off as a completely different major and then like realized quickly that all the career paths did not seem to be anything that I was interested in. And so then I had to take a semester of all the things. I was like, I don't know anymore because that's not what I have no more ideas. And so kind of did the splatter semester of everything you could take and then kind of slowly needled it down. So yeah, you got to figure it out a little bit as along the way, but I was not a direct to audiology person.
And I like what you said as well, right? Is there's so many people out there that are willing to take a phone call, really willing to have you shadow, et cetera. Take advantage of that, right? I can't say that enough that, take advantage of that and figure that out when you're, senior in high school, junior, maybe a junior or a freshman or whatever. Figure that out before you're like a senior in high school going, oh, what am I going to do with this career or this degree when I graduate here in 6 months or 3 months or whatever? So.
Absolutely. It is not any extra work for me to have somebody following me around all day. So I would much rather have people come and like try it and then see if they like it rather than not
Yeah, because you want people in your field that are excited about what they're doing, right? That it's like, yes,
absolutely.
and I like to see these kids grow and develop and, become better people. So,
Hmm.
all right. Well, thanks, Brianna. We appreciate your time that you've taken today to offer your career advice. To wrap up this video in closing, we'd like to remind our viewers that they can reach out to Brianna or other professionals they know, or even reach out to the BYU management team for an introduction to a professional. So you can do that. And then we'd also recommend that you look at the website, right? There's plenty of great videos out there that you can watch. And there's a great video out there about conducting informational interviews that you can watch if you're doing an interview. All right. Thanks again, Brianna.
Thanks.